Sooners of Oklahoma at 12-0 and still looking for respect nationwide.
What is going on, Sooner Nation? Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Barry and Mac Show. As always, myself, Barry, personal trainer, sports performance coach out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and alongside me, former Sooner wide receiver, 2000 national champ, Mr. Damian Mackey. How are we doing tonight, D-Mac?
Hey man, I'm wearing my ring. I never wear this ring, and it still fits. It still fits my ring finger now though. But doing well, doing well. Excited to be back on. We told you guys we was gonna be more consistent. By the way, Barry's been on my line, so just kudos to Barry. Like Mac, what's up? Um, good details. We got some good information that we want to share with you guys. We got some talking points we want to hit on. Again, shout out to my boy P. Fleazy. Today was his homegoing celebration. I know a lot of the guys showed up in Norman to pay their respects to a brother of ours who we all love and is near and dear. Blessings and prayers to his family and to the entire Sooner Nation as we mourn one of our own. But excited to be on tonight. Always a pleasure to be in business with you, brother. Let's jump right into it.
Absolutely, man. Want to remind everybody before we get the show rolling, this episode is brought to you by OU Insider, OUinsider.com. Go over there, get yourself a membership. We got a few threads rolling over there. Me and D-Mac have been highly involved as we haven't had a spring game to see, right? Some of the practice is limited. We didn't get a big old game full of big plays and highlight stuff to mull over. So we got to kind of read between the lines, check the tea leaves, and if you guys want to check those, go over to OUinsider.com. Also, recruiting news. We are going to talk about Jaden Ott and some of the things that are being discussed over there by Parker Thune, Brandon Drum, Jesse Crittenden, and the like. They all do a wonderful job, guys. Again, we said this a couple episodes ago. We're not the insiders. We're not bringing you guys the scoop. Our job is to give you analysis and a different take from another vantage point. And that's what we aim to do here. But occasionally, we have some input on some things and like to provide that. But go to OU Insider. D-Mac, I think the fans want to really know just our initial reactions to the event held this past weekend, the Crimson Combine. And I'm going to do this in kind of two layers here. I want to get just your thoughts on this. I have kind of mine, and I think we probably align in some ways, maybe not in others. And then we're going to discuss just some of the what we've heard kind of through the grapevine as far as other folks' thoughts and input. But the big 3,000-foot view, D-Mac, Crimson Combine, April 12th. What were your thoughts, man?
You know, I think it's a unintended consequence to the landscape we are in today, as is our college football product, right? The product we love. To me, college football is the favorite time of the year for me. I love it way more than the NFL, and I'm a die-hard Niner fan. I grew up on the Joe Montana, Steve Young years, Super Bowls, the whole nine. But when I got introduced to OU, and if you guys know my story, I didn't even know who the Boz was 18 months before I went to OU. I was not leaving California until I tore my ACL, and Roy and I ended up on a journey halfway across the country. When I got introduced to OU and when I walked through those halls and really started to understand just the lineage that I was joining. And even though we were in the years where, obviously, God rest his soul, John Blake, and then Schnelly, and Gibbs, right? The program had lost its luster of the mid 80s and 70s and the times before that, guys. I just respected the hell out of OU and then really learned how to respect the game. The amount of information and knowledge I was able to obtain and then really I needed to use in order to just get on the field was just overwhelming. And I got to tell you, man, Barry, if those who've been listening to our joint since our first year know the story, my first spring was very, very, very impactful. Guys, I switched from DB to receiver. I was fourth team X. I was behind Jarrell Jackson, who was the entrenched starter, JT Thatcher, who was an athlete who had done something at different things at different positions. Michael Jackson, who was a 400-meter Big 12 contestant and a grown man, right? 22-year-old grown dude. And here I am, this 18 and a half-year-old kid. I'm the fourth team X. And as the story goes, if you guys want to go back and listen to one of our first pods, it's like episode 4 or 5. Um, Jarrell does well. Starting X, he does what he needs to do. Jarrell's an entrenched guy. He's obviously a head football coach today, guys. He's a tech coach at Texas College. I believe it's in Killeen or some part of Texas. Um, he kills it. And then JT Thatcher has a couple busts, and Coach Spurrier, God damn it, Thatcher, get him out of that thing. Or maybe Leach is cussing him out because JT runs the wrong route. His problem becomes my blessing. Mike Jackson, as a third team guy, gets a chance to go. He's just a guy who hadn't played a lot of college football. Phenomenal athlete, good dude. In fact, we're boys to this day. But I think he may have gone out there and had a mental bust. And so, guys, it was my opportunity, my first spring scrimmage. I always tell the story: Ace flip, 96 Z post. All right, that's it's a flood concept into the boundary of the formation. Z runs a post to clear out the safety. Play side running back runs a speed out to take that flat defender to buzz the flat. It's me in the corner. It's my job to get to the hole and beat the backer. I run a 13-yard curl. Jay Hype throws me the ball. Kind of feel like I close my eyes, B. It was like happening so fast.
Yeah, yeah.
You better believe I catch that thing and I give somebody a little wiggle. I don't remember who it was. Probably like a Bubba Bab type guy. You know, that's a stray for Bubba. But me and Bubba had our times during spring. Take a back or miss, get up. Me and the safety. Don't let him tackle me clean. Boom! I catch 17 yards. I'm the 2X. Like a
Mm,
ball. And not before long, I'm splitting reps with the ones. Right. I'm playing every single game. Possessions that matter. Why am I saying this? Because those scrimmages lead up to the spring game, which is a 100% opportunity. Coach says, "Hey guys, here's the deal. This is the first time we're going to be in practice with a crowd. Some of you guys, the lights are going to be too big. For some of you guys, you're going to have too many distractions. For some of you guys, you're going to step up and make a play." Screen game, I score a touchdown. You know what I mean?
mm.
And so like that cements you as a one, as a guy going into summer ball and summer 7-ons, skellies and stuff like that. Jay Hype comes and talks to you and says, "Hey D Mac, we're depending on you. I can't have you miss." It's like, damn. You know what I'm saying? Like it's that extra pressure that comes back and really prepares you for the season. When OU doesn't have one of those, we gotta at least assume there could potentially be some, you know, some issues. And
Yeah,
we did a Sooner for Life. By the way, I didn't go. I've been working a lot. I'm in Cali right now, but they had a Sooner for Life deal on Thursday night. I believe it was Wednesday and Thursday, or Thursday and Friday, and then we were all invited back. And in fact, I saw a lot of my ex teammates on the field. So because it was a combine and not a game, people were able to just kind of chill on the field. But guys, 5,000 people. You know what I mean?
yeah,
5,000. Cal Gundy posted on Twitter, 50,000 to 5,000. There's something wrong with college football. I'll say this piece, and then I'll just say the part that really I think is disappointing for the fans, which more and more universities are expecting fans to fork over money for NIL, to fork over more money to pay for tickets, to fork over more money for their guaranteed seats. Right? The product is getting less and less one that feels like is our own. Right? You're dealing with
mm,
who are in the portal every year. You're dealing with coaches who either may get fired every 3 or 4 years or looking for a better opportunity, right? And I just think the sport needs to be paying close attention to who butters the bread. If you know what I'm saying, because spring game is our football 6 months before season. You know what I'm saying? By the time we're missing the game, football, NFL season ends, basketball season's getting to the season where finally basketball is going to be interesting, thank God.
yeah,
But that spring game, it's not an accident that there's 30, 40, 50,000 people because they need their fix. And so not having it, just my personal opinion is I think it's a disappointment to the sport. to the university, to the fans. But in the landscape of NIL and all these uncharted waters where, everybody's pretty much doing free for all, trying to collect a bag. Obviously, we'll talk about Nico here in a second. I understand why a school like OU has to do something like this. And so I do have a little sympathy for the time we're in, but I have way more sympathy for the paying customer, the paying fans. And like I said, my own story. I don't know if there's the
Mm.
level of trust Bob has in me as a true freshman who was converting from DB, who was coming off an ACL, who had two seniors and a junior ahead of me. You know what I mean? JT's going into his junior season. JJ and Mike J are both seniors. I don't know if they have that same level of confidence in me if there isn't a spring game where I've got to do blitz pickup, not where I'm picking up blitz, but I got to run
Sure.
my hot routes, right?
Yep.
Where it's down in distance, right? What does Mackey do in 3rd and 7 and 8, right? Does he push his route to 9 so that he can get tackled at 7 and get the first down, or does he get scared, right? Do you drop a ball and then you cry and crumble up like a little, like a punk, or do you make a mistake and then rebound? Those things, guys, spring is the closest you get to a game in the fall, and I promise you, at least when I was playing, it mattered.
Mm.
Guys got from look team to travel team because of spring game. Some guys were on the cusp and then they became, look team, right? Scout team, special teams, right? Because of a game like that. And so I'll let you speak to some of the rumblings you heard about what the players had to say.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just think from all parties involved, you're talking about a 90% drop from 50K to
It's huge.
5,000. We might as well have had the game at Norman North and it still would have looked the same. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're at
Yeah.
a Norman North stadium and it still looks half empty, that's
Yeah.
problematic.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. It was a disappointment, and I have seen the argument for the it just wasn't a long enough runway to really market it properly. But I'll say it. The practice and watching practice is just not something that the average general going to the football stadium on a random spring fall day is not something the family wants to do, right? Your avid message board, guys, your guys who are active on X, the football guys, but maybe they'll go. Some of that is something that might interest them, but your family, or trying to get maybe the wife and the kids out there, like they it doesn't feel like a football game, and therefore it's just a little too foreign to be easily marketable, in my opinion. It's not very palatable, right? At the end of the day, it's not recognized as the sport of football, right? You're just going out there and throwing the ball around. And of course, like I watched it, and there was some stuff to glean from it. We'll talk a little bit about that, but for the most part, it's a nothing burger, because at the end of the day, pressure and pressure in the moment is how you can tell what kind of athletes you got, and who you are playing with. And there is a huge difference in running some routes on air in front of 5,000, and there's only you and two other receivers out there on the field, and that ball's floating 30 yards down the field, and it's just you and Derek Strait, or you and you got to go up and make the play. That is a totally different thing, and you're right, that's where you get to see who is going to be a mainstay, who's going to be a dude, and who's going to not. And what we used to get out of that game was pretty valuable stuff outside of the star players who would play early in the game and then they would ease it back. Obviously, you wouldn't see much from your running quarterbacks, your Caleb Williams, your Kyler Murrays, your Jalen Hurts. Guys like that weren't able to really showcase their stuff. And sometimes it was duds for guys like Baker Mayfield. He didn't have a great first spring game, but he went out there and ended up being a star. So I would say this. It's incredibly, incredibly important um, to not lose sight of just the origins of what made the sport good. And when you start going too far away from that, man. You're going to alienate the fans at some point, and I think we're on the brink of that. Which brings me to this. I didn't purposely segue in this regard, but let's segue nonetheless. The Nico situation at the University of Tennessee. You obviously know Coach Heupel, and everybody here has heard you talk and going to Tennessee to even speak to the team and do some various things. For those of you who don't know, go check back on that episode. We really went deep into some of the relationship that DMAC has with Coach Heupel and the importance of him in his life and the impact, but also just helping a brother, helping a fellow friend, a former teammate, and they had a guy who decided to pull. It's an NFL move. It's an NFL veteran move where you sit out for training camp and you say, I'm not going to play unless the contract gets done. And I want to say this. I saw a deal earlier. 4 million would be more than what Brock Purdy is making in the NFL for the 49ers. Which to me, at the end of the day, like it's not to say that these guys aren't worth it, that the value of the player isn't merited, right? That money isn't worth they're not worth what they're getting. But at a certain point, there has to be some regulation on this. And we've heard from through the grapevine, there's some alienation going on as well amongst teams and the players within the team because of these scenarios. So speak on the Nico thing, DMAC, and just give us your thoughts on how to best not be in this situation to begin with.
So three things. Number one, Jay Knott's officially in the portal. We're gonna talk about that later. Number two, I had already planned on saying what's up to the people in the comments. Sooner Cowboys is a guy who's always rocking and rolling with us. I see Jimmy Satterfield in there. I think Kimberly, right? Is that right? Kimberly's always rocking with us. Bishop always rocking with us. But Roy Lee, bro, what's up, bro? You just magically jump in the comments today, my guy. What's up? He just jumps in. That's my
We
guy.
got
That's my brother from another. By the way, even if it's an imposter, which I'm pretty sure it's Roy Lee, what's up, man? Shout out to my brother jumping on today. That's super dope. Is there a way we can like plug him in? Can we get him plugged in? Maybe potentially. I don't know.
Man, we might be able to do that.
I know.
Let me
I
see
know.
what we can
Yeah,
do.
yeah. See if we can figure that out. But yeah, he shot out some love to P Fletch. I'm gonna say this on live since I got him. Roy promised me he's gonna allow me to go to the lake house. Looking forward to doing that this summer. And he said he doesn't even have to be there. So I'm gonna go there and cut up and act a fool and have a good time, go fishing, use his boat and all the other stuff he has, and see if I want to buy some property out there. But Nico, you're nice. Cut and dry. Buddy overplayed his hand. Cut and dry. People say supply and demand, right? Dictates value. That's not true. Your value is what people are willing to pay for you. And as a freshman who got paid $2 million, so these are some things I didn't know initially, and I did send hypertext. I absolutely sent him a text and said, "Attaboy, don't you dare let somebody
Yeah,
hold you hostage and extort your program." Right? I absolutely sent him attaboy.
absolutely.
But guys, he made $2 million to sit the bench his first year. Didn't know that.
Hmm.
Obviously he was a $2.4 million earner last year. There were people who said in the conference that like he was a run of the mill quarterback. I think statistically he was a run of the mill quarterback. He was a phenomenal quarterback in the preseason. He was killing it when they were playing against Sisters of the Poor Handkerchief University A&T, School of the Blind and Deaf and Cripple, right? And he was really good when they played us. He made some key throws when they needed, and he shook the hell out of Billy Bowman in the hole. Oof, Billy, I'm gonna hold you for that one because he gave you that, and you didn't even touch him. Nice little hole. But being funny and being cute, he didn't merit uh and ask for $2 million. And I think it also was really concerning. um Roy's on tonight, so he can confirm. uh Guys, we would have literally like beat his ass. I couldn't imagine Hype saying, "Hey guys, I'm not coming to practice the day before spring game. I want more money." Like literally, Hype's locker was right by our lockers. The quarterbacks were right next to us. We literally would have had hands for Hype. Like, how dare you call yourself a leader and make us do all this stuff
Mhm.
off season and all these different extra routes that we're supposed to be running, and we know you're making probably 2, 3, 5x more than what we make, right? If we're in that landscape, D-Max probably, like you said, I don't even need. Listen, you give me 100 grand, I guarantee you I flip it to $1 million. I'm the guy who says, yo, give me 100 grand and 5% equity in XYZ company. I don't want the money. I want the asset. But imagine I'm a 100K guy and he's a $2.4 million guy.
Yeah.
And I made him look good because I was catching those bang eight slants on that RPO dive, and the quarterback takes it. And I beat Kanai Walker on that bang eight slant when the safety presses up and Kanai's over the top and he throws the ball. And I run 70 yards and he gets the yardage, but I really did the lion's share of the work. Right? Like, I can't imagine what his teammates Roy Lee said.
I play
Solar
for
Circle. That's Roy Lee. That's Roy. By the way, if you guys have not read his book, you need to get his dang book. Holy freaking moly. We read it as my company. I know you look at my ADHD kicks in hella fast. But guys, Roy wrote a book. It is phenomenal. It was phenomenal. Roy Lee says, Roy, you did not play for free. Statute of limitations is up, bro. Come on, I can't even let you lie like that, dog. neither one of neither one of us play for free. So
There we go.
by the way, that's all I'll say. I'm gonna keep it at that.
There we
Um,
go.
I'm very disappointed in him as a player. Let me tell you the other thing that really I don't believe he should be allowed to say my dad. My third
Mm-mm.
year as a college athlete in a situation in which I've already been awarded over $4 million, I'm kind of a man. You know what I'm saying? Like, dad, sit your ass down. That's a dad sit your ass down moment when I'm a third year. Now he's a true freshman. The kid who was green, our kid
Yeah.
green, and all the stuff came out that he really wanted to stay, but his dad was involved and he was a true freshman, first real cycle, and then his first off season. Right. I got a little bit more. I've got a little bit more, you know what I'm saying, kind of sympathy for that type of kid. But bro, you sat a year, played an entire year, and then went through the entire offseason again.
Yeah.
Nah,
Three
bro.
years deep. Yeah.
Yeah, nah, bro. You ain't getting no passes, bro. You know what I'm saying? You was playing for the check, and now I don't know if you saw it, but like Tulane, bro. You went from Tennessee to the school that's too lame. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was too lame of the decision. I think like UCLA is a potential space, but in other words, he's dropped from the top echelon schools, which he was at a blue blood in Tennessee, to now potentially, being at an also ran university in Louisiana, or even like UCLA, bro. Like, UCLA 25 years ago was kind of legit. UCLA now, like, bro, you're in the Big Ten, my G. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, you're kind of a tech state university of agriculture and medicine. So I don't know. Um, I think you get what you pay for. They talk about that what is that, FOFA? You know what I'm saying? And
Oh yeah.
uh
Yep. You figure
FAFO.
it out. Yep.
Yeah, man. Like,
Yep.
I think he's going to be the poster child for some governing or some type of framework going around. I wouldn't be surprised if schools. I heard a kid tell me, by the way, this is firsthand info. I kind of alluded to it. I heard a kid or a parent tell me their son was offered a 3-year deal, right? So it wasn't
Mm.
just for the year. And I think schools are probably going to put more parameters around protecting themselves, more so than just season to season, bowl games included. But anyway, I think it's interesting. I don't think,
Yeah.
the kid's made money already. He's going to get a chance to play someplace else. I think he's kind of screwed up his character a little bit. He's going to kind of have to do a rehab tour to get back in the good graces. But hey, it's going to happen to somebody. So there it
Yeah,
is.
and I think guys like Caleb Williams, set the bar, and that is really what that level. And I'm not wanting to okay this, but to play devil's advocate, there are some players who have that kind of demand, but at the end of the day, Caleb didn't do that. He just went and worked the deals to be able to get the money that he wanted. Like, there was some backroom stuff going with Lincoln going to USC, and there were some shady things going on. But at the end of the day, he didn't quit on his teammates. Right? He didn't say, "I'm shutting it down, full stop, and I'm not coming back to the game." that's where it gets very, very, very problematic. And you set the tone for the rest of college football. But in this case, I think it set it the other way. It's more of a cautionary tale than the norm, and hopefully it will bear out like that, because as you alluded to, we know but we've heard that he wasn't even the best quarterback that some of the players for Oklahoma, in fact, saw all year. He wasn't the most challenging guy. He had a solid game, but you could name 3, 4, 5 other players who outplayed him and who outdueled and were more valuable or more worth that money, quote unquote. So to see somebody just say, you know what, I'm going to sit it down, full stop, not going to play until you guys pay me. At the end of the day, you're also, we cannot lose sight, and I think Coach Venables does a good job at this. And I think Saban started to figure out that this was where the college game was going. But you are still getting an education. You are still getting professional development, which is why Soul Mission is so important and why Venables really pushes that. And you are still getting an opportunity to go play in the NFL and leverage yourself for some long-term money if you are that kind of product. And I would say that Nico was on a trajectory with Coach Heupel to be that kind of player, to be the kind of guy who potentially has more than a cup of coffee in the NFL. So just to see that occur, it really saddens me for the game of college football. But DMAC, want to turn back over to the Sooners and discuss some of the things that what we did see, from the game. I will highlight some of the stuff right off the top and then just get your reaction that I have already posted to the board. The first thing I have discussed, and I got 2 threads on OU Insider, plug in OU Insider again tonight, guys, is the benefits of a quarterback's coach has really paid dividends already. With what Arbuckle has done, DMAC, seeing Michael Hawkins Jr. and his ability to get those hips into his throw. A lot of folks who maybe don't understand the science or the mechanics of the way, a deep throw to the sideline when you're going across that hash all the way to the other side of the field works, right? You got to see it, and the timing has to be there. But you have also got to be able to get your hips into that throw. And one of the biggest factors for quarterbacks to go from okay and good to really good to elite NFL guys is the hip disassociation. We've talked about it a little bit, but being able to properly get your hips into that throw, to coordinate that with the shoulder. Josh Allen is one of the best examples of a guy who did not have that when he first got into the NFL, and it absolutely tore his shoulder apart. And he said the biggest thing he did, the biggest change he made, was getting with a guy who could help him. It's the Dak Prescott drill. It's the swivel in the hips. It's the little shimmy. And it seems silly on its face, but it was something that Michael Hawkins just did not quite have nailed down. One of the best I've ever seen come through Oklahoma in recent years have it. Obviously Caleb, of course, but Baker Mayfield, that was the secret to the velocity on the throws, was his
J-Dub too.
mechanics. And J-Dub too.
Years ago. J-Dub,
Yeah,
he had it.
he had it, and you can absolutely see what the quarterback coach for Oklahoma, well, what Arbuckle has been able to do working with Hawkins. Mateer seems like he's the right guy. The buzz around Mateer is that he is believed in by the team. The program is behind him, and if OU can keep some receivers healthy, I think Deion Burks has cleaned up his physique a little bit. He even looks a little better than he did a year ago. Perhaps kind of washing away some of those injuries, taking a little bit of a break. Not to defend that, but sometimes you do need to give your body a little bit of a reprieve. and being able to clean things up a little bit. I've heard dietarily he also adjusted some things, so that's wonderful to hear from his standpoint, becoming more of a pro, more of a veteran in the game. And there was a few guys who stood out. We'll talk about the tight end position because I also went on about that on the board. But DMAC, first thoughts on the quarterback position and any and all thoughts you had from the event. I think quarterback was probably the easiest thing to get a, not a read on, but see like, okay, there's some development there. That looks good. The spiral's tight. The hips are in it. All that sort of thing. Can the guy throw it far, and can he throw it accurately? So what are your initial thoughts on the return there?
Yeah, I honestly didn't even watch it. I just called a couple guys and say, "What were your thoughts?" And like you said, nothing burger. I had already been told firsthand Hawkins' development, continued development, and what that meant, and really a lot of people's trust and faith in he as a leader. Something were to happen to Mateer, I think it's one position where we could say we're in really strong position to continue with a guy who's had some game reps and really won some games for us. That Auburn game's a big win for him. Um, the thing that I guess speaking to what you're speaking to, Mateer, and really like, hey, what's the differentiator? Right? Because I'm like, everyone's telling me Hawkins is doing better. Hawkins has made the jump. Hawkins is, I always talk about what do freshmen eventually do. Barry, what do freshmen eventually do? They turn into what?
The normal guys.
They
Oh,
turn to
they turn it.
sophomores.
Yeah, yeah. They turn
Turn
to
to
sophomores.
sophomores,
That's what we're saying. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I expected Hawkins to be a guy who year two, who got some game reps under his belt, to be a guy who could be depended on.
yeah. Hmm.
But I just like, hey, so what's the differentiation? Like what separates Mateer? And aside from knowing the playbook in and out, and really, I think his advantage has been his ability to explain to receivers and tight ends and skill guys and even linemen in some of the blocking schemes, right? The nuances of why or how, right? I think most guys can probably tell you what they supposed to do on a respective play. Right. Again, I don't know the terminology they're using, but again, if we called Ace Flip 96 Z post, my first year, I could tell you what I was supposed to do and what the Z receiver is supposed to do and what the back is supposed to do. But I probably didn't know why yet. And I didn't know why that speed out was such an important component to that route combo versus zone, or why that Z receiver was such an important component if they're in zero man, right? I didn't know all that until I had a chance to really synthesize with the offense for a season, an off season, go through, I'll never, I told the story in our pod. We ran ace flip. We ran ace flip 96 Z post against Texas, and
Yeah.
Hype gets a pick 99 season, and all we can practice. I'm telling Spurrier, like Spurrier, to play inside man. Like, help me understand in a bunch formation how I'm supposed to beat my man inside. If Curtis is 1 yard away, he's like a yard and a half away. There's no room for me to really work. Can I take an outside release? And he would say no, no, no. And of course, in the game, we we run the route and I get jammed. I only get 6 yards up the field because I got to cross the guy's face. And they didn't pick six us, but they pick us. And that's part of the momentum in which they take over the momentum in the game, and they eventually win the game. Well, I didn't know. Guess what? My sophomore year, I would have been able to tell Spurrier why I took an outside release and what my thought process was and how I probably would have caught the ball, which we did that, right? As we got 2 and 3 years into the playbook, we knew what to do and why we were doing it so we can make adjustments on the fly. Mateer has that ability with the
Mm,
other skill guys. He can sit with a receiver and say, hey, man, the reason we say take 4 steps and then cross his face is this. Be looking for this if they're in zone. If that safety crosses your face, be looking for another one to sink. All the different nuances that receivers and tight ends and other skill guys may not be considering at this particular point in mind because they're just trying to learn how to do their job.
yeah.
He understands everybody else's job. He can be a manager, a facilitator, oversight, someone who can really help put things together. And so that makes sense. And then I hear he's a good athlete. People
Yeah.
make the bake comparisons, but I think he's probably more of like a knight in terms of running ability. I think he has more. Bake had probably 9 or 10 escapability,
Yeah.
but Bake wasn't beating most most big time linebackers to the corner even, right? Like if it's Bake against a backer, he's kind of got to, juke his way there. He couldn't just beat him with speed like a Caleb or like a you know, Kyler, one of those other guys could. Mateer is a guy who will give even I would say a good SEC linebacker a run for his money when it's 3rd and 6 and he's got to get to the edge. I think he's a guy who more often than not will be able to make that play. Of course, Hawkins, he's a guy who can haul ass. And so I feel good about the Qs. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I just
Sure.
wanted to preface that piece on, because I asked the question myself, like, okay, if Hawkins is so good, why is everybody just anointing Mateer? But that did make sense. Like, that makes sense. Mateer can actually provide another level of nuance to the other guys as they're learning.
And here's the second question I want to ask before we go into some of the little nuggets that we've heard and things that we've kind of pulled after talking with some folks just regarding well, what's going on behind the scenes. But a big thing that I've heard consistently, DMAC, from the defensive side of the ball is that this offense, just by and large, is harder to play against. The defensive players are just saying straight up, it's a tougher offense to strategize, to make the play against. We're hearing that from the first, second, and third level of the defense at various spots. So, talk a little bit about that because the game in pre-show that we discussed was OU LSU a season ago, and we talked about LSU just putting Oklahoma in a bind. That defensively, OU had to make really tough choices, and that's the way to beat a Venables defense, especially one that still is missing an athlete or two. They were suffering through a handful of injuries and hadn't really played together, the way you wanted to leading up to a game like that in the final game of the season. And and right now what we're hearing is that the offense is putting the defense in maybe not a similar LSU bind, but you're hearing that it's more difficult to play against and difficult to make the play against. What do you think about just the progression that an offense has to make in order to already be at that standpoint, and how much stock do you put in that? Hearing that at this point.
I'm glad you said that because I don't put a ton of stock into that yet. You know, what I do know is what I've been told, and I know last year the defense dominated the offense in almost every session of spring and fall camp. They literally had to kind of like manipulate opportunities for the offense to be in, like, make sure the defense is in this front so the offense can run this play.
Mm,
And I got to tell you, unless you got Nostradamus as your OC, that's not a good place to be in. Um, I just believe this year we will have a fair opportunity to have success on offense. Again, go back and listen to any of our pods, any of the seasons, even with my man at Mississippi State, Levy. That offense was a plan A and then junk,
yep.
right? Like trying to make a big play. If the plan A wasn't working, we were in trouble. Um, Seth, love him to death, Sooner brother. I'm glad he bounced back and is with hype and those guys. I hope they have a good season, except when they play us. But his offense was trash. You know what I mean? And he's got to own that. I say this on our pod, and I mean it. When I played at OU, Barry, like everybody was very honest with you to your face, and
Hmm.
I think that mantra has stayed with me as a man in business and as a father and as a spouse. Like, I'm just one of those guys who just give it to me raw. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
Don't try to, I don't know. Don't I just want to hear it. And the truth of the matter is our offense has been putrid for 3 seasons. Now, with Gabe, DG, and some of those guys year two, we were able to get some stuff cooking, right? We did have some plus players who could help us out in certain scenarios. And Levy's offense did have a true plan A. It did. We were able to run that midline stuff, and if we had a good setup, we could be productive, especially against inferior talent in a Big 12 conference. But the fact of the matter is, that was a playbook, a scheme with zero depth. The depth to that playbook was we have our stuff, and then we can tag the hell out of everything else. And you can't just tag your way to beating teams. That's just, you've got to have a play off of a play, and you got to have a jerk play off of a mainstay, and you got to have bread and butter that you can run against any formation, right? And you've got to have things you've been setting up all game. You've been running this sweeping, and then you got the bend back with a guard or a sniffer cuts across the formation. We just didn't have enough of that. And just watching film of Arbuckle's offense, we literally he just have a fair playbook. And so I think our defense got used to, accustomed to very simple keys, or very simple concepts,
Mm-hmm.
and putting them in positions where we can beat them with formation, we can beat them with tempo, we can beat them with action, we can beat them with sprint out, we can beat them with screen games, we can beat them again with misdirection, we can beat them with RPO. There's just more to think about. And you brought up the LSU scenario. It was interesting because in that game we had a lot of momentum early, offensively and defensively, and then finally LSU said, "Screw this! They can't cover us man v man." Right? We put their guys in space, and they're either not going to have enough guys to stop the run.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to put that overhang cheetah in a position where, and it was very interesting, right on defense. Go back and watch it. Big cheetah, throw the ball. Little cheetah, run the ball. When Dobie gets hurt and he's no longer the guy who's really a plus defender in run game and pass game, and now we've got to have a defined cheetah, right? And sometimes it's a smaller guy and sometimes it's a bigger guy. It was very easy for Nesselmeyer, I think, the Q, to walk out there, and I don't know who their Q was if it wasn't him, but and we're in a 42 front with an additional backer type at Sammy O. Okay, we're gonna put Sammy O in a compromising situation, and we're gonna run stuff deep in the hole. 12 to 14 yards, outs, corners, right? Outside sits, and he's got to sink and get to that spot. Oh, now they put more of a DB type, Peyton Bowen or one of these other guys, right, that are more like a corner slash safety because it's
Mm-hmm.
not Dobie who can come in and force the C gap.
Yep.
Oh, they've got a small guy in there. Let's get those two offline tight ends sniffing across the formation, and let's lead up through the hole. And guys, they ran as essentially quarters 2, 3, and 4, and then they just went 1v1 on the outside as well. They said, "Hey, we're going to take our top receiver and see if your top DB can beat us." They literally put us in a position where we were compromised. That's the type of stuff we will have the ability to do. And if you remember, Barry, like I used to cry. I'm not a crybaby, but like I'd be like, why don't we just? I'd be like,
Yeah.
bro, put him in a position where that whole defender, or put him in a position. Like we just didn't have the depth in our playbook
Yeah.
for 3 seasons.
Wasn't there.
It's
Yeah.
it's 3 seasons, guys, and knowing that we have that in place again now, it's exciting. It's good to hear.
It leads me to talking about the playmakers. At the end of the day, it is the Jimmies and Joes. And DMAC, there is some news in the transfer portal. Cal running back Jaden Ott has put his name in the hat. And going back, guys, watch the film. Last season, ankle injury, had some issues. Man, when you go back and watch his 2023 campaign, he is a I'd say top 15 back in the country, or at the very least, right on the cusp. He is a guy who has home run ability. He is a patient runner, and I will just say it. I'm kind of tired of sugarcoating it in terms of just what you're seeing. Barnes and Sawchuk are not going to be the answer for Oklahoma this coming season. I have now sat through film on multiple practices and Sawchuk, although he looks like he's put on some not bad weight, right? He still needs to clean things up a little bit. He just looks tight and bound up. He doesn't look fluid. When you watch him run the same drill where going next is a Franklin who looks light on his feet, a X Rob who looks lighter on his feet than both Sawchuk and Barnes. That should also tell you something. And then you got a youngster in Blaylock who, guys, just cold hard facts. What we're hearing is Blaylock is the home run hitter in the offense when he is squared up. And not hearing this about X Rob, man. We got to see X Rob on full display a season ago. If you get squared up with Blaylock and you are a last level defender, you are you're getting cooked. He is taking it to the house because he has some serious home run ability. But OU is going to be aggressive in this transfer portal, going to get a running back. And what do you think, DMAC, when you hear that being stated and know how aggressive Oklahoma is to find themselves a playmaker? What does that say about the room right now?
Don't do that. You trying to cue me up for an alley oop. That's a
Absolutely.
s-
That's an
that's a
easy
setup.
lob.
That's a
That's
setup.
a Chris Paul to Blake
Listen, those of you
Griffin.
who look, when you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, like, how long did it take us to realize Q was going to be a dog? 3 carries. How long did it take us to realize Ronaldo was going to be a dog? One game. How long did it
Yeah,
take us to realize AD was going to be a dog? Mixon was going to be a dog. P Ryan was going to be like I could go down the list, right? You're 3 years into the program and you're still well, number one, oft injured. I think it's really important to say the Sawchuck I saw as a freshman was a guy I was extremely excited about, and in season two, I was upset that he wasn't getting burned until I found out he had real bad legs and his hammies and
agreed.
all those things.
Yeah,
Because I was really excited about freshman year Sawchuck, so I don't want to beat him up on pure talent because I feel
sure.
like his body has changed a ton since he's gotten to college. Barnes, I was extremely excited about his first spring. He came in as a spring enrollee and played in that spring game and showed some juice, and I was a big proponent. And then more game film, and again some injuries as well. But he is the guy who I would say most prominently has had his fair chance of games, Big 12 and SEC, to show he's the guy, and he just hasn't shown he's the guy. You know what I mean? Like that to me has been um, my biggest beef with Barnes. He's gotten touches in a lot of games, and then he played against superior or supremely inferior talent and showed against scrubs he could go get 200, which means he's trying his best in other games and just hasn't been up to snuff. Blaylock, as you said, um, I hear the young pups got some it to him, so it'll be really good to see another back in the bevy that can go out there and make something happen. I was under the impression that Tatum was exclusively baseball right now, but I'm hearing that he's in practice or is periodically
He's kind of
practicing.
in and out. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's gonna have to clean some things up again,
I heard
physique
he's a Jag.
wise. And yeah,
Eh, You're being nice. I heard he was a Jag. That's what I heard. Like I heard he isn't showing any special attribute skill set that separates him from the pack of running backs we currently have. X Rob's doing his thing. Belay, like I've heard about. By the way, I was a huge Franklin fan. I wouldn't say huge. I was a guy who said he looked like he's got some juice, but he pissed down his leg in the bowl game, and I just think that he doesn't have a lot of rope. Um, I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. To
mm,
all the people who were saying we were BSing, to all the people that were saying we don't know what we're talking about, to all the people who were saying, why do you continue to bring up? Because we watched the film and there is a lot of meat left on the bone. There are plays where our totally terrible offensive line got a hat on a hat and our running backs didn't make people miss. It's just fact. It's in the film. You can see it. And as a running back, you watch the game where when we're on defense and our NFL caliber middle linebacker has an opportunity for a clean shot and the guy makes him miss in the hole. Guys, the offense messed up. The play was supposed to be made, but the running back was a natural ball carrier,
yeah.
leveraged angles, made a play. There are opportunities all season like that where our running backs they literally consistently did not make a play. And so you look for somebody who can. The kid from Cal, is a guy who I think, the rumors are multiple six figures, over $500,000. You don't pay that type of money in the landscape of college football we are in with a guy like Nagy running your general manager position and put him in a rotation every quarter or every 2 series. That's a kid who's going to carry the ball quite frequently, and obviously there's a lot of presumptions being stated. He's in the portal. We got to make sure we can get him locked down. And we can't count our chickens before they hatch. And then, of course, on the other side of that, we got to keep him healthy.
And D-Mac, before we get out of here, we got a chance to finally see the tight end position. I wouldn't say necessarily like play the game, right? But there was a little bit of kind of full speed stuff, and I just want to give everybody kind of my initial sports science nerd breakdown of the position because Arbuckle, I wouldn't say made headlines, but he said that the position is one of the more improved positions on the team. And from a top to bottom standpoint, I think I can see where he is coming from. We got a DMAC reaction here.
I just
So
saw that someone said Tatum hasn't even played baseball. Like, is that
yeah,
real? He hasn't played? Wow.
yeah, I don't know if that actually might be true. I haven't kept up with his
Yeah,
baseball
I
stuff.
hadn't
I've
paid
just
attention
known
at
he's
all.
been in and out of the practice side. But to go through the tight end position and again discuss this on a OU Insider just a little bit. OU is going to have a pass catcher in Carson Kent. I think he is a guy who OU is going to be able to split him at various positions. He's got some good fluidity to his game. He is a guy who can catch the ball, soft hands, not going to be the most amazing athlete on the field, but I liken him to a guy definitely not in the same category. You know what? I would put him, and he honestly wears the same number. If Lance Donley, and this is a little blast from the past, what was a little thinner and a little leaner, I think they're not bad comps. And Donley, what was an effective player at various times and a really solid blocker. I think Kent isn't the blocker that Donley was, but the other guy that they've got is 44. I believe it is Locke or Lockie is how you say his name. He seems to be more of your inline guy, and I actually think he might get some reps in some of the goal to go situations. If Oklahoma goes tight, if it feels like he might be the guy. But you kind of brought it up last week or 2 weeks ago, DMAC. I would say that from a matchup standpoint, and there's still a lot that has to play out. We've got to see this live on the field that Canic athletically, and we've also heard a few things in practice, if he can tie up the details and the nuances of that position and at least have a handful of packages where he's really got it down, he is going to present the defense some really tough, difficult scenarios. So talk a little bit about that. Just real quick, as we've heard now a couple things that it's becoming a little layered and a little more confirmed now as we've gone through spring that Canic can play a little bit and that his athleticism, now that especially a Mitchell is gone, he's not coming back, is kind of the athlete in the room. Discuss that, bear that out, and then we'll move over to the other side of the ball and then dive into a couple other things real quick.
I think it's a position we're going to scheme as much as away from as much as possible. I wouldn't be surprised if, I mean, God forbid we got to stay healthy at receiver, right? We need our receivers to stay healthy, but I think they plan to listen. I think the plan will be to have a 6 lineman front that will run when we want to go big and run the football. I believe they're going to put a 6th lineman in and run the football. Hey, dude, we'll run the ball. This guy's eligible, but he's not. That I believe that'll be one package. I believe they will have a lock type inline tight end where we're going to be in 21 personnel, 2 backs, 1 tight end, and try to be as multiple as possible where he's a guy who might run an action out, an action sit route, spot route kind of situation, and maybe a seam, kind of like a pop seam, right? We show the ball, backers step up, we're in the seam right behind them, try to hit them in the hole. I think we'll be athletic enough to do that, and then I think we're going to find ways to get Canic in space, Canic through the hole. I mean, here's a funny take. I'd rather Canic do the tight end around we did every other game last year, buddy.
Oh
We ran
my
those. We
gosh.
tight end arounds. We did rerun. Godly.
Yeah. He'd
I
be more of a threat to get that
100%.
thing. Yeah,
100%.
absolutely.
I think Canic will find his way to 3 three or more TDs, especially if he gets a little bit of momentum early on in the season and he kind of feels comfortable and the game slows down. The fact is, the dude's been in the program 4 years and is comfortable playing college football. So the moment's not going to be too big. He's been in film rooms. He's been in a lot of scenarios and situations, and he sat a lot on the sidelines last year, but he played a ton of specials last year. I expect him to come in the moment to not be too big. Catch the damn football, make a guy miss, be physical, be big, right? Go make some stuff happen. Um, I really don't have much else to say about the position.
Yeah.
I think listen, they got to practice with the position in practice. So guys are going to get reps. But if those guys don't create mismatches or they inherently cause mismatches on defense against our formation, we'll scheme, 11 personnel, two back, three receiver type personnel. Yeah, it was at like 20 personnel, whatever. We'll scheme personnels to really put us in positions to potentially have Kanik be a slash slot type tight end, or we'll, have like an H, and see how they decipher that kind of a deal if one of those guys can't be a true inline, uh, dependable two-way blocker and receiver.
Yeah, and real quick, we'll kind of breeze through the defense because I think we've said a lot there, especially in our last episode. Guys, if you haven't heard it, go check it out. A lot of that was based on some practices that we've been privy to, not information, not necessarily the information, but also kind of combing through some video and seeing what guys are doing. And one of the players that I think Oklahoma is not going to be able to keep off the field, and a guy who has really made a name for himself in this offseason, in this kind of spring cycle, and really coming out of winter, is Jaden Hardy. Jaden Hardy is a player who, the way we've heard it, knows for the football. I think he is one of the more fluid athletes back there, and that goes for even a Peyton Bowen. He is a guy who just, he sees it and reacts. And now when you have guys like him and RSJ that we discussed last week, and you are really putting that secondary in a situation to be able to make some plays, right? I think Hardy is a guy who can continue to just elevate what the expectations are for that position. And now you don't have just one 5-star back there, right? You're not relying on a Peyton Bowen to be the only guy. Now you've got multiple players back there. And I'll just get your initial response off of this. Corners did look pretty good in what I saw from the Crimson Combine, right? It looks like Jacoby Johnson has made some improvements technically.
Freshmen turn to sophomores.
There you go. I think he's a great example of his footwork is so much better. It is night and day better. He is seeing and reacting much quicker. He was a guy, and I know this is getting a touch nerdy. He was such a great jumper off of 2 feet out of high school, but when he jumped off of 1 foot, it was weird. It's almost like he lacked a little bit of explosiveness. So I think there was an element of just needing to practice the position more at that elite level. One of the players I do want to talk about, because we've continued to not hear substantial buzz, and there are just things that we kind of see, and we alluded to it. And I don't want to beat the horse, but when we're talking about potential of guys transfer portaling out, I'm not saying that he is a portal candidate, but it feels like PJ is is really in a spot where he is going to have to make some jumps end of spring, summer at this point to see significant playing time with some of the guys coming up. Danny Okoye now looks the part, right? Physically looks the part. He is an aggressive, get after it player, an athletic version of RMT. And guys, RMT practicing like a full-on veteran out there, just a guy who is caring about the nuances, the details of the drill, a guy who wants to do it right every single time. But D-Mac, talk a little bit about that, and maybe a guy who I'm sure you saw some folks when you were playing who 2, 3 years in, and it just felt like they never quite could get to that next tier, right? That they were solid at times, but they weren't a guy who became what you expected. And it feels like PJ may be on that trajectory. I don't want to call his career over at all by any stretch of the word. Still a phenomenal athlete. Looks like $1 million. He is first team, all get off the bus, right? He's the one of the first guys you want coming out of there. But at the end of the day, you got to make the plays on the field. So discuss that, and then maybe what the pressure is like for a player who is such high caliber, a top 10 recruit, and that kind of thing.
So three things come to mind. Number one, he may just be a guy who wants to be a part of the team. He loves the culture. He loves the university, and he's like, I ain't leaving. Right. Some of those guys come. There's some girl. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. Some girl. They say, what's undefeated. You know what I'm saying? Aside from Sooners, a lot of seasons, there's this other thing that's undefeated, and girls possess it, and so that could be a contributing factor. Another thing is um, someone else said it, but like there's just, I mean, you recruit a Marvin Jones Jr. to provide that added depth. You bring up an Okoye, right, to provide that added depth. You know what I'm saying? And so like you've got three dudes who are really, ready to go. Not including some of the other pups coming up. What was the kid you really like? The D end you like? Weir? What's his name? What's the
Oh,
kid's name that you
what?
you spoke about him last week? He's a
Oh,
DN.
Taylor Wine. Yeah,
Wine. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Right. Like
yeah.
they've got guys, and
He
by the
just
way, I've heard
needed
his name.
weight. Yeah, he
No,
just needed
I've heard
weight.
about him. They've been
Yeah.
speaking about him, right? And so the other thing is, you a lot of guys, I think there's been enough portal data to show that a lot of guys who leave who aren't like dudes, right? There's like two communities of people who portal out. There are a lot of dudes who are going to go look for more money or upgrade the university. They're going from an NC State to an Oregon. They're going from right like a middle tier team to a really good team. And then there's guys who are like second teamers at universities. And to be honest with you, a lot of times you don't hear from those guys again. And I think there's
Hmm.
enough data for programs to start saying, dude, you sure you want to go to Arizona State? We had a 5-star named Clayton who went to Arizona State, and dude's a backup now. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't think he was even Arizona State played in their bowl game, and he was a guy who was just kind of like a guy on the Arizona State team. So I think it might be a scenario where he looks to do some stuff like that. But then last but not least is coaching. You know, um, when you look at somebody like Chavis, by the way, he's earning his stripes on the job. I was a big skeptic. Not that I was a hater, but I
Hmm.
wanted, he was a guy who went from essentially like a GA analyst to a big time program position coach. I think he proved pretty early that he could recruit, and I think he's really doing a good job of ascending as a tactician, a practitioner, right? And obviously leveraging some of the expertise of Bates, his counterpart, his partner in crime. Um, but sometimes the light bulb goes off late. And, a school like OU, you want to have your fourth team guy be a 5-star who could potentially have that ceiling because that ceiling is always there, right? You want your fourth team guy to be a guy if we're in a game against whatever, a Bama, and we, God forbid, we have injuries or for whatever reason, he has to go in. He's not a 6'2", 4'9", 40 dude where
Yeah.
once he's in, it's an absolute, you feel me? Like it's just a total mismatch. And so, I hope he turns into a program guy, PJ, and we'll leave that there. Going to Hardy. Hardy's just a little undersized. I loved him last year. He gave me RSJ vibes. He's a guy who understands football, understands angles. He's your prototypical high safety. He's a guy who could be undersized and be a ball player. So I'm looking forward to seeing. I think he's put on 8 to 10 pounds. Obviously, just getting older is going to help. Looking forward to seeing his ascension at the cornerback position. Like I said, Jacoby's a guy. I mean, he had all the measurables, he had all the tools. They had faith in him last year. It just means that he was having mental bust, right? And that happens when you're an 18-year-old fresh out of high school being asked to play. So I'm looking forward to him feeling more comfortable, being being a value add. You add Gentry, you add Eli, you add Newcomb and Guillory, you add Little Hawkins. I feel good about the position. We have a bevy of guys who look the part. They just need to be coached up. And so looking forward to seeing that. Doby's on the mend. He's a huge value add to the defense. And then of course
Huge.
the additions of um, Kendall and Marvin Jones. I think those guys are a big deal. The best thing a defense can have is something we have in spades. And like I said last week, we better be able to depend on this. And that is a defensive line that can be ass kickers. My expectation is in most games, our defensive line can just say, yo, we're going to turn up and make everybody else better. Your quarterback's going to be too busy looking at these bullets flying from this 0, this 3, or this 5, or this wide 9, or whatever. This one tech that these 4 eyes, they like to run that 4-eye deal. Whatever we're running, right? Your quarterback's going to be so worried about that he's going to be throwing the ball up, running for his life. That's what we need to be able to hang our hat on, and then to have the Kip Lewises, and the Dobies, and the Kendalls, and the Samuels, and those guys running and chasing the football.
Yeah, my last thing that I'll say on PJ, and it almost he may be a victim of his own genetics a little bit. You've heard me talk about this, but I know we got some new listeners who weren't around initially, and I said this when he got to Oklahoma. I wanted to see him develop the ability to bend that edge and to have that lower body mass, because I almost felt like he was a little too top heavy. Right, the goal when you are a defensive end is to be able to bend that corner, dip that shoulder, and cut that angle as tight as possible. Otherwise, tackles are just blocking you right out of the play. And that is the PJ way. That's the way that BYU's tackle played him. That's the way we saw Baylor deal with him when he played against Baylor. And his lower body, I'm not surprised that the ankles have actually dealt with a brunt of the issue, right? Because bending that edge is so much about ankle mobility. And when you are that tall and that long, and you are trying to press that corner so hard, it is going to the science just is not on your side. The angles are not on your side to be able to deal with that much force and that much energy going one way and then trying to transfer it the other way. Last thing, DMAC, we'll talk about what we have not discussed: big broad view expectations, and this is more of just a little nugget that we have heard out of camp, is that this team expects to be at double digit wins. So when you hear that there is a consistent mantra amongst the coaching staff and amongst the squad that, regardless of what happened a year ago, the coaching staff even so feels very good that this team is going to be 9, 10, 11 wins. Man, talk about that when it comes to just what it takes for Oklahoma to be back to being Oklahoma again. And we'll probably close on this tonight. Give your thoughts there.
I think they have to say it again. Let's be honest, right? They can't walk around and saying we need one more year. They can't walk around and saying maybe, trying, probably. They gotta own it. And I think everybody from the HBC on down. Again, I'm the biggest BV fan there is out there. I love him as a man, as a strategist on the defensive side of the ball, and I think he did a wise thing as a CEO of the program. Excuse me, which is bringing a very good OC. I wish he had done it a year sooner. Um, Listen, if they were saying anything else, in fact, I kind of don't like 9-3, right? If you're like, oh, we're going to be at least 9-3, to me, that kind of says we're going to give ourselves permission to lose 3 times. I never predict a loss. I just never do. That's just how I am. Life, business, and everything. If it happens, it's a learning experience. But I don't plan it. I, 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 I hope they are honest with themselves around the work they are doing to get what they say they want. You know,
Mm,
the optimist in me says defensively we were good enough to win 9 games last year, and even with the guys we lost, we could replenish the ranks. Right. So, you lose a Stutz, that's a big deal. He's the heart and soul of your defense. You got Kip coming back. You bring in a Kendall Daniels, and you've got a couple of guys that's been in the program, and Samio and McKenzie. You feel like you've got some decent depth, especially when primarily we run a 42. So we've got 4 guys to play 2 positions. So I feel pretty good about that spot, right? You lose a Billy Bowman, and you've got 2 guys already entrenched in Peyton and RSJ, and then you've developed Hardy and Powers, right? So you're looking at that safety position, and you're saying again, we've got 4, or Dolby. Dolby could play high safety if needed. You've got 4 or 5 guys you feel good about. Again, corner, I'd say you have 2.5. Eli Gentry and Jacoby who've played, but you've got depth there. That's why I say it's a wait and see position for me, but you've got the measurables. You've got a lot of long, limber guys who, unless you're going up against a true 6'5" receiver, there isn't a big mismatch. Sans Eli. Eli's obviously a guy who is on the shorter side. And then that D line, again, they need to hang their hat on that D line. I want to see us get pressure with 4. I want to see us wreck shop, without having to bring a ton of pressure. I want to see us show pressure, and then we back out of it, and they're running quick game because they're so scared. They're running a tunnel screen because they're so scared. I want to see us be in a 30 front and be able to have those 2 edge players push the pocket. The quarterback's got to step up. He doesn't have all day. And so I look at our defense and I say, BV, and he owned this. He's, damn it, I'm the DC. Oh, that one. Hell yeah, coach. Like, I'm ready to ride for my
Yeah.
coach. He's like, I'm the HBC, but yo, I'm running the defense. Y'all ready? Hell yeah, I'm locked in. And then on the offensive side of the ball, like I said, wisdom. I think 3 years in, he said, screw this. Let me bring in as a CEO, right? Uh, a sales consultant who has a track record of selling my widgets without me having to be a lot of hands on, so that I can focus on the defense. I think it was a really smart thing of him to bring in an offensive minded individual who has a track record of overperforming with lesser talent, now banking on the fact that OU will have excessive talent for him to go and find success. So 9 wins is cute, and my language cute is bad. Um, but I think, honestly speaking, if they feel like they can really win 9 or 10 games, then damn it, we should win 9 or 10 games.
Absolutely, man. As we saw some of the comments, a lot of new quarterbacks in the SEC this year.
Yep.
Outside of Nussmeier, and what we thought was Nico at Tennessee, but now that changes, right? You're going to have to season a whole another player at that spot, so that bodes well for Oklahoma. And I don't know if this is bold, but I think Mateer is going to end up being a top 3, top 4 quarterback in the SEC. Just the things that you see mechanically. And one of the throws that I thought was incredibly impressive was him rolling to his left. And you talk about bringing back some memories of the guys who can make this play. Him rolling to his left, flipping the hips, and then he had an on-target perfect pass to X-Rob, who comes down with the ball. Just good, solid, quality hands. It was great to see that kind of play from a quarterback where we haven't seen that a whole lot. And if you guys didn't hear the beginning of the show, talked a lot about Hawkins' development, and I think OU is just in a really good spot. Not to pump the sunshine, but that there are some things to like about this upcoming year. DMAC, as we close out, as always, want to give you the final word, but the NBA playoffs are set. This is where things get interesting. Do you have an Eastern Conference final, Western Conference final? Who's going to win? I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the bracket. I'll tell
Yeah.
you who. Okay. I'll tell you who I've got right now, and I posted it on X. I think
OKC in Boston.
OKC and Boston in the finals. I actually think Indiana makes it to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Okay.
They have got
They're healthy.
they're healthy. if you go and look, their defense is actually better than it has been. And that was what was so bad for them. Their
last year
defense was
for sure.
awful, much better this year. And Halliburton, when he gets into the playoffs, man, he can just knock down shots. I think New York is pretenders until even when they go get KD, they're going to get KD this offseason. It's still going to be a nothing burger. And I think Boston is going to be the team ultimately to come out of there. And I think OKC is going to draw a Denver or the Clippers in that second round. I think they match up well with either one. Denver, no coach. I think Clippers are probably the tougher matchup in that case, just because of Kawhi being able to turn it on in the playoffs, and you've got Harden who can he can turn back the clock a little bit, and that their big Zubac is still a guy who could give Chet some problems, but OKC, them getting Hartenstein was such a big deal in the offseason. But I think OKC's biggest threat is if LA, and this isn't to, kind of tee it up for you, but if the Lakers can make it to the Western Conference Finals, I think that will be a tough matchup for OKC. I think they have just enough out of their bigs that OKC they'll have to honor that and what they can do. But Luka and LeBron, that combo, man, they have meshed together so fast. So some of the fastest like cohesiveness I've ever seen. So who do you got?
So who do you got winning it? Because you're an OKC fan.
So I had OKC.
Who's who you got winning
whole,
the finals? I presume you
so
think you're going to beat the Lakers.
OKC and Boston, I got it going 7.
Who's going to win Game 7?
OKC.
At home. At home.
Well, they got it at home. Yeah,
Yep.
they got home court through the whole playoffs. I
Yep.
think OKC just the numbers bear out that this is a championship team. Top 5 offense, top 5 defense. It bears out that they got a shot to actually get this thing done.
So, and I mean, listen, I feel like the East is a 2-horse race. I'm telling you, when the game slows down and those versatile bigs that Cleveland has, they're gonna be a problem. I bet Cleveland gives Boston all everything they can handle. Boston can shoot the three. It's the equalizer, 1 through 5. When Horford's out there, 1 through 5, they can shoot the three, and that's when they are real problematic, especially with the unicorn too.
Yep.
But I think Boston comes out the East. I'm a homer. I'm a Lake Show fan. It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? I'm not again. I don't predict losses. So we got to take care of business in Minnesota, and then we're gonna have to take care of business with probably Houston, and then it'll be the Lakers versus the Thunder, and my big bro or my unc always says, I think he says, OKC, do re mi, I'm sorry, Lakers in 5.
Yeah, I was already seeing it in the comments. It's so great.
You know what I'm saying? And
it's real.
Boston versus, I grew up playing Lakers versus Celtics. If you're an OG like me, you played Lakers versus Celtics on old school Sega. It was a game. It was a phenomenal game, man. Lakers versus Celtics. Honestly, OKC is the better team. As a Laker fan, I'm just not going to bank against my team. I'm just not going to do it. I want to see if LeBron can stay healthy. I think he needs to own the fact that he's the 3. He is not the first or second option. He's just not.
Yeah.
Finney Smith is a guy we're going to be really leaning on just because he's a 2 D and 3 guy, and his 3's been hot lately. Vincent's been shooting. Vincent's been shooting the 3 well, and then of course when we play the young pup at center, he's a guy who can go play above the rim and be a little bit of a, on the defensive side. He's still kind of a space cadet. He's not very savvy just yet. Jackson, He kind of gets a lot of fouls when he's called upon a bunch on defense, but we need somebody to take care of Denver. Houston's going to be hard, but I think Luka's big enough to be able to kind of brush off, because they've got the athleticism on the wing. And then do re mi, I'm sorry, OKC, Lakers in 5.
Lakers in 5. That's crazy. Yeah, I think OKC just has too much on the bench, and I think that's going to be they built themselves a squad that doesn't have the same shooting woes that 2016, 2015 version where you had, Cephalosha in one season where he just wasn't a threat on the three. And then you had Robertson, man, who just he shrunk the floor so much for them. But D-Mac, good stuff as always. I think the NBA playoffs is going to be pretty interesting this year. I don't know how many NBA fans we got here that listen to the show, but I know with OKC being involved, definitely going to be a factor. I'm going to be at a couple of the playoff games. Hopefully they
Okay.
make a deep run. So, oh yeah, I'm already planning on
When
it,
I'm in
man.
town, when I'm in Dallas, bro, let's link up. I may drive up.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Lakers
Let's
games are
do
like
it.
$3,000. OKC games are like 400. So I'm
Yeah,
all in on going.
the OKC games are manageable,
Yeah,
and if you
Lakers.
want to holler, I got the hookup on that.
Okay, yeah, yeah, let's do some fact. Let's just
We'll
make it a date. Let's go out. Let's go
let's
see a
do
game
it.
together, bro. I'm all in. I'll be back in
Hell
Dallas
yeah.
next week.
Awesome stuff. Well, guys, go to the X, D_Mac13 is where you can find Damian. Find me at BWise Fitness, at letter BWISE Fitness. And we're on the Instagram at The Barry and Mac Show. Go check it out. We are posting shorts over there on the daily now, guys. We're taking clips, cutting them up in the show. Go share those things. Let people know about the show. D-Mac, quickly, take us off, and then we'll get out of here.
Appreciate you guys for everything, man. This is a passion project. Love you guys to death. Y'all keep rocking with us. We're going to keep delivering the goods. That's a promise.
Killer. Sooner Nation, thank you all for tuning in today. We will see you soon.